Please note that the video contains material related to sexual assault, racism, homophobia, and suicide. I love vintage movies. Especially, like those foreign subtitled ones. From the United States or UK, for example. I like the 70s New Hollywood thing. I like thrillers, and I like Clint Eastwood. So when 1975's The Eiger Sanction was on TV one night, it immediately struck me as something that I should check out. And dear God, this film is weird. It has to be one of the weirdest films that Mr. Eastwood has ever done. And yes, I know he made that one where he co-stars with an orangutan, and I haven't seen it, but honestly, I'd be kind of surprised if that turned out to be weirder than this one. The main thing about this film is that it contains a lot of truly baffling, edgy jokes. Or at least I think they're jokes. You see, it's not just that they're gross, which they most definitely are, much more than usual for a film from the 70s, but they're so ridiculously blunt, and they make almost no sense at all, which makes it almost feel like it's a bad AI imitation of edginess. The film begins normally enough with a grisly, out-of-context murder. We then meet Mr. Eastwood's character, who is an art teacher and has young girls thirsting all over him. Naturally. In fact, one of them follows him to his office and offers to do anything, nudge nudge, wink wink, to improve her grades. But Clint does the only sensible thing and tells her to go home and study harder. He also gives her a little pat on the arse, which... gross. We find out that Clint is actually a former secret agent who is under pressure to carry out one last mission. He goes to see his boss, who has some pretty extreme COVID safety measures. Fortunately, Clint only has...
the usual. Syphilis, running sores, and clap.
That's good to know. By the way, the cinematography in this scene is gorgeous. Overall, this film looks amazing. So he's told to shoot someone or he loses his precious art collection, so... he agrees, he flies to Switzerland, we get some brilliant stealth gameplay from our man Clint, and he does the job and ends up in an airplane where we meet his love interest for this film, played by Vonetta McGee. I have to say I really like the way this conversation begins. I think it's pretty funny and they deliver it really well.
Crap?
I beg your pardon? You did start this conversation by saying crap, didn't you?
But things soon take a weird turn.
That's really my name. Jemima Brown. My mother was hooked on being ethnic.
Or else turned on by a pancake.
So, according to IMDb, this film was based on a book where all the characters had these Bart Simpson prank calls Moe's type names. For example, Clint's boss from earlier, he's just called Dragon in the film, but originally his name was Uraz is Dragon. Out of all the names, they thought that calling the African-American character Jemima Brown was just too good to leave out. So Clint takes her home, and in this genre, it of course leads to sexy times. And just as they're about to get it on, he says this.
You never know. Sometimes people do things they thought they'd never do again. Like rape, for instance. Yeah, I thought I'd given up rape.
That's the worst possible thing you could say in that situation. In real life, this would be absolutely terrifying. Although in this fictional universe, she's into it, and the scene just continues into some standard impressionistic squirming. Well, I mean, people do act out all kinds of deep, dark fantasies, but come on, you have to talk it over first and pick a safe word. So this is what I mean when I say that the film sometimes feels like it's written by an AI. There is no context, no setup, no follow-up, no nothing. He just blurts out the name of this horrible act of violence in the middle of getting it on with his girlfriend, and nothing. It just sort of is there. The movie carries on like nothing happened. Anyway, it turns out that Jemima also works for the government and steals Clint's money to get him to do another hit. Man, the working conditions in the Secret Service are really crap. We find out that Clint's target is a member of a climbing team that's about to attempt to scale the north face of the Eiger, hence the film's title. The only problem is they haven't figured out which member of the team it is. They just know that he walks with a limp. So Clint travels to Arizona to do some climbing training with George Kennedy. He introduces Clint to his new personal trainer, and he does a full reverse Metal Gear Solid 2.
She's a girl.
What are you... What the...
You're a man?
We get a montage of George, not Kennedy, that's actually her name as well, frolicking around and Clint trying to keep up while occasionally doing wisecracks about her Native American ancestry.
Well, this is a chance to strike back at the white man.
Scalp me. Damn it,
wish Custer would have won. Screw Marlon Brando.
Classy. This goes on for quite a while. Clint is upset that his portion sizes aren't as manly as he'd like. There is some more frolicking, a bit of tits, although no sexual assault roleplay this time. Eventually we meet Miles Mello, an enemy of Clint, who has information that could help him with his mission. Now, I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but I feel that the film is subtly trying to suggest that he's gay.
Leave Dr. Hemlock alone, faggot. Forgive him, Jonathan, but I'm afraid faggot has not yet learned to recognize you straight.
Okay, here is the movie's special brand of bluntness again. He actually has a dog called
Faggot.
That's cute.
Oh yes, definitely the cutest of all the slurs.
Be careful he doesn't rape you.
Okay, seriously, did this word mean something different in the 70s? Because they're not using it in any way that makes sense to me.
Miles, the only thing you and I have to chat about is you having an incurable disease and lack the guts to kill yourself.
Okay, Clint, come on. I guess you've realized that people like it when you talk rough to the bad guys, but there is a bit of a difference between did he fire 6 shots or 5 and advocating for gay euthanasia. On a more serious note, can you imagine being gay in the 70s and hearing one of the most charismatic leading men in the movies saying bullshit like this? I mean, I was terrified of people finding out about my preferences in the 2010s. And this is Finland, a fairly socially liberal country. I thought that my straight friends would just feel uncomfortable around me and people would just view me through these special pink lenses all the time. None of which turned out to be true in the end, but the fact that it felt like a realistic scenario in my mind as recently as that really makes me think about how much worse it must have been a few decades earlier. I mean, when you think about it, I was actually kind of lucky even during those teenage years because I've never had to fear for my physical safety, for example. Add to that the high suicide rates among LGBTQ youth that persist even to this day. Considering all this, all I can say is boo, Mr. Eastwood. Boo. The rest of the movie is actually pretty normal. Clint goes to climb the Eiger with 3 people, one of whom is presumably trying to kill him. Then there are some lengthy climbing sequences that are actually pretty cool. The actors did their own stunts for this movie, and I like it that they shot it in a way where you can really see that they're doing it, because that's sadly not a given. I'm reminded of Jodie Whittaker's first episode as the Doctor, where she jumped from a crane to another about 20 meters off the ground, but then they shot and edited it in such a way that she could have just as well done it on a soundstage. I may have spoken too soon when I said that the rest of the film is pretty normal. Well, at least it's a different brand of insane compared to what came earlier. You see, after all this build-up about who is Clint gonna kill, is it gonna be the right person, or maybe is somebody gonna kill Clint first? It turns out that all the other members of the team die by accident, and then it's revealed that Clint's target was George Kennedy all along.
You're limping, Ben.
So he's a little suspicious about taking advice from him.
Catch this rope when I throw it to you.
He's supposed to tie the rope around himself, so guess what that is? It's the tie of the Eiger. God. So then George Kennedy is like, well, I'm sorry I caused the death of your friend. And Clint is like, okay, we're good. And the Secret Service is like, a lot of people died, so one of them must have been the right one. And then Clint checks out George's arse in the end. The hypocrite. And that's the end of the movie. So as you can probably tell, I really did not like this movie. Of course, whenever you have media from another era, you're gonna run into stuff that they thought was perfectly normal to put in at the time, but in retrospect is just disgusting. And the fact that it was a different time, it doesn't excuse those moments themselves in any way. But there's plenty of cases where the rest of the movie is actually pretty good. And it would be a bit of a shame to just throw all of it away. I mean, I personally believe that it's okay to enjoy a work as a whole while finding aspects of it problematic. But in this case, I didn't feel like the film gave me enough in return for having to sit through all the shit that was in it. Like I said, the mountaineering sequences were kind of cool, and if somebody else was way more into them than I was and told me that they liked the movie because of them, I could understand where they're coming from. But for me, this was a pretty miserable viewing experience. Also, I would like to point out that I've seen a lot of movies from the 70s, and they're usually not nearly as cringy as this one is during its worst moments. Like sometimes you hear people say stuff like, well, actually it was quite progressive for its time. But this film actually manages to be regressive for its time. So that's about it. As usual, no sponsors, no merch. If you see any merch that appears to be mine, it's not. Especially don't buy the magazine that has my first name on the cover. If they have any pictures of me, they shouldn't have those pictures. See you.